Good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Thursday, 12th June, 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. India witnessed a tragic India Boeing 787 Dreamliner crash in Ahmedabad, bound for London, resulting in 242 fatalities, marking the first such incident for the Dreamliner model and intensifying concerns about air travel safety given other recent disasters. Investigations are underway, focusing on why the plane began descending during takeoff, which has intensified scrutiny of Boeing's safety record, especially after the company's recent deal with the U.S. government regarding the 2018 and 2019. Amidst escalating Israel-Iran tensions, India's stock markets experienced significant losses on June 13th, with Sensex and Nifty 50 seeing a market capitalization decrease of approximately 7 lakh crore. Gift Nifty trends signaled a gap-down start, trading around 24,734. Almost 234. Almost 234. Almost 203, 205 points below the Nifty futures previous close. However, ONGC and Oil India's share prices rose by up to 4% due to increasing crude prices influenced by the same geopolitical conflict. Despite the June 13 dip, Indian markets have outperformed global markets since March 2025, adding $1 trillion to market capitalization. The Sensex closed 823. 0.16 points lower, and the Nifty 50 was down 1.01%, recovering from a 900-point intraday drop, with the Nifty below 24,650, and the India VIX spiking 10%. To decrease reliance on China's export restrictions, India is actively developing domestic rare earth supplies. Global companies are also reassessing production strategies due to the US-China trade war, creating increased manufacturing opportunities within India. India's headline inflation eased to 2.82% in May, which was lower than anticipated, potentially allowing the Reserve Bank of India to further reduce interest rates. In other financial news, a $115 billion identifies the ultra-short end of India's debt market as most attractive, citing India's expected economic growth acceleration. Investor interest in India is driving block deals and IPOs. India's new thumbs-up system aims to help traders distinguish regulated brokers from unregulated ones. Marshall Wace is currently engaged in a selling spree in India. The NSE Academy is collaborating with ACAMS to enhance anti-money laundering education within India. NSA Chief Ashish Kumar Chauhan noted the Indian stock market's significant growth over the past decade. Raja Venkatraman and TradeBrains portal have shared their top stock picks for June 13th. China is making significant strides in technology and pursuing global opportunities. Mass production has begun on the world's first non-binary AI chip, integrating hybrid computing into sectors like aviation and industrial systems. Zenzitan enhanced its Cantonese-speaking chatbot, Sensicat, with real-time audio and video features. ByteDance is partnering with Lao Fengxiang to create AI-powered smart glasses for the elderly, offering voice navigation and translation. At the Paris Tech Fair, Chinese ambassador to France Deng Li highlighted China's advanced 3D printers. PopMart's Lapitoy has been lauded by Chinese state media, showcasing China's innovative drive. Chinese firms remain focused on global expansion, with the US considered a key market. Douyin is reducing guarantee deposits for merchants to 5,000 yuan, US $695, to retain and attract sellers. Xpeng intends to launch smart cars with semi-autonomous driving features in Hong Kong next year. China encourages Hong Kong-listed mainland companies to issue shares in Shenzhen. Following trade discussions with the U.S., China has issued a limited number of rare earth export permits, while reportedly using protracted negotiations to strengthen its own capabilities, especially in critical minerals. China opposes bloc confrontation and nuclear proliferation. NVIDIA's CEO warned that U.S. restrictions could empower Huawei to meet China's tech demands. Turning to the United States, export controls have been used across 3 presidential administrations to limit China's advanced computer chip production. A potential new China trade deal might only undo the damage of past aggressive trade policies. In Hong Kong, China Labor Bulletin, a rights group tracking worker unrest in China, ceased operations in 2024 due to financial difficulties. Chinese and Hong Kong stocks declined due to Israeli strikes on Iran, impacting risk assets. Israel experienced heightened tensions as its military conducted strikes on multiple sites in Iran, resulting in Defense Minister Israel Katz declaring a state of emergency. The strikes, confirmed by an Israeli military official, targeted dozens of locations and reportedly resulted in the deaths of armed forces and Revolutionary Guard chiefs. The United States was informed of the operation beforehand by President Donald Trump, but did not participate. The escalating conflict between Israel and Iran immediately impacted financial markets. Crude oil prices sharply increased, with Brent crude surpassing $73 per barrel, fueling fears of potential disruptions to energy supplies and paving the way for the largest single-day gains in approximately 5 years. In India, the surge in oil prices caused a downturn in aviation stocks, with Indigo and SpiceJet both declining by over 5%. Meanwhile, gold prices soared, exceeding Yukon lakh per 10 grams, reaching a monthly high. Across the broader market, risk aversion prevailed, leading to declines in cryptocurrencies, with Bitcoin dropping over 3% and Ether falling by 9%. Asia-Pacific markets displayed mixed performance amidst the prevailing uncertainty, contrasting with gains made on Wall Street due to positive U.S. economic data. Analysts identified immediate support for the Nifty at 24,750, followed by 24,500, suggesting that the previous support range of 25,050 may now function as resistance. In trading recommendations, Vaishali Parekh highlighted Sterlite Technologies, ASE, and Sterling & Wilson renewable energy as potential intraday stocks, while other experts suggested purchasing Sterlite Technologies, Manali Petrochemicals, Seifel, and Imagicho World Entertainment. United States. The average long-term US mortgage rate has slightly decreased to 6.84%, marking a second consecutive small decline. Corporate insiders are selling shares at the fastest pace since the U.S. election. US investigators are assisting in the investigation of a deadly Air India crash. The U.S. is considering using Cold War-era powers to develop rare earths to secure its supply chain. Concerns over US tariffs are contributing to a decline in the dollar's value. The S&P 500 closed higher, boosted by an Oracle rally and favorable inflation data, while the U.S. IPO market shows signs of revival, exemplified by Chime's successful debut. Overall, US stocks ended higher as Oracle revitalized AI sentiment. Boeing shares experienced a drop following a deadly crash. US stock market futures dipped as inflation data loomed, and the threat of global tariffs from Donald Trump impacted companies like Apple, Boeing, and Oracle. US stocks opened lower amidst rising tensions in the Middle East. Goldman Sachs has trimmed the probability of a U.S. recession to 30%. Micron is expanding its US investment to $200 billion, solidifying its commitment to domestic semiconductor production. The U.S. Secretary of State congratulated Russians on Russia Day, a gesture of diplomatic engagement. China. Across the Pacific, Chinese solar firms are focusing on overseas expansion to survive as tariffs, viewing production abroad as crucial for their long-term viability, despite a temporary trade truce. NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang suggested Huawei is positioned to grow its semiconductor business if US chip export restrictions persist, although NVIDIA's technology remains a generation ahead. Chinese companies, including Huawei and Unitree Robotics, are strengthening their relationships with Europe at the Vivatech trade show in Paris, amidst increasing competition with the US. China is experiencing a week of perceived wins in its standoff with the US. Shanghai's market saw a mixed close amid US-China trade developments. Stocks and the dollar climbed as investors hoped for progress in US-China trade talks. Australia. Shifting continents, Gem Life has raised $486 in Australia's largest EPO this year. Australia's regulator is trialing a faster IPO process as listings hit a decade low and cracking down on finfluencers for providing unlawful financial advice. Australian shares dipped amid tariff talks and corporate shakeups, erasing early gains to close lower and continued to edge lower as investors renewed caution. However, the Australian share market also soared to a fresh high. The Australian market experienced a slight overall decrease, with shares opening flat as oil stocks jumped and Accent shed 20%. The Australian market is considered at risk of global shocks, with potential threats from tariffs to Australian miners. The Australian dollar has weakened as Israel's strikes on Iran rattled markets and caused oil prices to spike. A new super tax in Australia is expected to impact retirement savings, potentially affecting long-term financial planning for citizens. Hong Kong. Neighboring Australia, Hong Kong stocks experienced a decline due to increasing geopolitical tensions, which reduced investor appetite for risk assets. The Hang Seng Index fell 0.7%. Europe. Venturing into Europe, the FTSE 100 closed at a record high as investors sought alternatives to US stocks. Play will delist from the Icelandic Stock Exchange and fully exit from the US market, signaling a strategic shift in its business operation. South Korea. Finally, South Korea does not desire to transform the ROK-US alliance into one solely focused on deterring China, indicating a broader strategic vision for the partnership. Saudi Arabia is actively diversifying its economy and advancing technologically through key initiatives. The kingdom is bolstering support for small and medium enterprises, SMEs, to stimulate economic growth. The Saudi Arabia sports betting market is projected to reach USD 2,030.3 million by 2033, with an 8.1% CAGR. The Saudi Arabia ceramic tiles market is projected to reach USD 1,322.3 million by 2033, with a 5.58% CAGR. The Saudi Arabia modular kitchen market is projected to reach USD 491.4 million by 2033, exhibiting a 3.46% CAGR. The main stock index closed lower at 10,840, but then saw a 1.4% jump after reopening following the Eid holiday. Regarding finance and investment, Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, PIF, is playing a pivotal role. OpenAI is reportedly in discussions with PIF alongside the UAE's MGX and India's Reliance Industries for $40 billion in funding to advance AI models, and the Stargate project. The PF's potential investment highlights Saudi Arabia's AI ambitions, further supported by AMD's investment in Saudi Arabia's AI Cloud initiative. MoneyGram has partnered with Tikmo, a growing digital wallet in Saudi Arabia, to expand services, reflecting the rising adoption of digital finance, especially among the unbanked using prepaid cards. The Saudi housing minister attended the listing of the Saudi Real Estate Refinance Company's SRC, first international sukuk program on the London Stock Exchange. On the front of international relations and religious affairs, approximately 8,606 Hajj pilgrims have returned home. Tragically, 23 Bangladeshi pilgrims have died during this Hajj season. Lunit eye technology will be used again for mass screening during the 2020 Hajj season. Biman Bangladesh Airlines is facing challenges establishing temporary offices in Saudi Arabia. Concerning energy, Saudi Arabia is increasing its oil market share, but has limitations on further production increases. Helmerich and Payne, HP, is experiencing rig suspension in Saudi Arabia. Shifting to the United Arab Emirates, NMGX is reportedly discussing a potential $40 billion funding round with OpenAI, Saudi Arabia's PIF, and India's Reliance Industries. In India, Reliance Industries is also reportedly involved in discussions with OpenAI, Saudi Arabia's PF, and the UAE's MGX to secure $40 billion in funding. Finally, in Bangladesh, beyond the tragic loss of 23 pilgrims in Saudi Arabia during the Hajj season, Bangladesh Airlines is facing difficulties establishing temporary offices there. Russia is prioritizing drone development under President Putin. Amidst efforts to attract foreign investment, Yandex is set to replace Norilsk nickel within the Russian market. The war in Ukraine has reportedly led to around 1 million Russian military casualties, straining the nation's economy. Strategic bombers are being redeployed following Ukrainian drone attacks. Alexei Navalny's ally, Leonid Volkov, received an 18-year sentence in absentia, signaling continued suppression of dissent. A teenage spy recruitment case involving cryptocurrency has surfaced, implicating Russia. Russia has repatriated over 1,200 Ukrainian soldiers' remains. Retaliatory strikes have been conducted on Ukrainian cities in response to Ukrainian airfield targeting. Marco Rubio's Russia Day message stirred controversy. The U.S. ambassador to Russia is expected to step down soon. The European Union is actively countering Russia through sanctions and energy strategies. This includes renewing existing sanctions, developing new ones targeting Russian oil, and approving tariffs on Russian fertilizer. The European Investment Bank, IB, is increasing defense funding to €3 billion. Sanctions against Chinese banks, allegedly aiding trade with Russia, are under consideration. Azerbaijan is playing a key role in monitoring price caps related to Russian oil exports. Ukraine is actively targeting Russian airfields, which has provoked retaliatory strikes from Russia on Ukrainian urban centers. Russia launched a large-scale drone and missile barrage on Ukraine, prompting President Zelensky to call for international intervention. China faces potential EU sanctions against two smaller banks accused of supporting Russia through trade relations. United Kingdom. The UK economy sharply contracted in April due to global trade tariffs and domestic tax increases. Shipments of commodities, cars, and metals to the US significantly dropped. Concerns are escalating regarding UK Finance Minister Rachel Reeves' spending plans, fearing a potential snowball effect on borrowing costs. Hiring freezes are worsening across the UK as businesses struggle with cost increases. However, The UK tech minister believes pension intervention will unlock capital. Ukraine-Russia war. The war between Ukraine and Russia persists with ongoing military actions and claims of heavy losses on both sides. Kyiv claims Moscow has lost over 1 million soldiers. A massive Russian drone strike in Kharkiv killed 2 people and set apartments ablaze. Ukraine has struck targets inside Russia, including an electronics factory and a military-industrial facility in the Moscow region. Drone attacks forced the closure of a Moscow airport. Prisoner exchanges continue. President Zelensky stated that Moscow does not see Ukraine as a country. The EU ambassador stated sanctions are working and Moscow is losing access to key military tech. Middle East, India. Rising oil prices in the Middle East could contribute to risk-off sentiment. This could lead to a depreciation of the Indian rupee, possibly exceeding 86 per USD. Europe's stock markets have experienced a downturn, influenced by unfavorable tariff news and diminishing hopes for trade improvements, further complicated by increasing geopolitical instability. The UK's economy has contracted by a greater margin than anticipated. Certain defense companies in Europe have seen substantial growth, with their value more than doubling this year, prompting analysts to question if this level of expansion is sustainable. Nvidia is expanding its European presence, establishing new collaborations, and pledging to build 20 new AI manufacturing facilities throughout the region. CNBC reports that European CEOs are increasingly optimistic due to discussions surrounding a possible decrease in U.S. dominance. South Korea's President Lee Jae-myung is prioritizing economic revitalization by engaging with Cabal leaders and advocating for crypto reforms, honoring a key campaign pledge. His focus extends to international relations, highlighted by his initial call with Vietnamese leader Long Kong, where he committed to strengthening bilateral ties. President Lee also aims to promptly re-establish communication channels with North Korea. His participation in the upcoming NATO summit is viewed as a pivotal moment for South Korea on the global stage. Economically, South Korea is navigating challenges, evidenced by a $33.60 billion fiscal deficit in the initial 4 months of 2025, marking the third largest deficit recorded. The stock market initially surged, reaching a 3-year peak following the president's reform announcements, but this rally subsided following an Israeli airstrike that affected market sentiment. Adding to external pressures, South Korea is facing calls to align either with the US or China, as articulated by Steve Bannon. The nation is also being urged to create a consolidated task force aimed at combating illegal gambling activities occurring overseas. Japan's trade negotiator has ruled out a partial trade agreement with the United States. Geopolitical tensions, particularly Israel's actions in Iran, led to the Nikkei index closing 0.68% lower. The Nikkei also is being affected by a weak yen and worries about U.S. economic growth. The head of ESG at Japan's Government Pension Investment Fund, GPFF, is stepping down. Japan remains low in the 2025 Gender Gap Report, ranking 118th among nations and the lowest among the 7 countries. The Financial Services Agency, FSA, will revise rules for real estate investment trusts, rights to encompass data center equipment. Lombard Odier believes the yen is poised to strengthen due to Japanese reforms and the appeal of its bonds. Former U.S. President Trump has reportedly impacted a Japanese tea company's expansion in the United States. Tokyo Cosmos Electric is backing Borns Japan's tender offer. Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company and the University of Tokyo have established a joint chip laboratory within Japan. Japan's fiscal debt issues have potential ramifications for global crypto markets, with Japan being considered a significant potential Bitcoin buyer, according to Bitewise. Amidst rising geopolitical tensions, the United States has ordered the partial evacuation of personnel from its embassies in Iraq, Kuwait, and Bahrain. This decision comes as a response to increasing instability in the region, particularly concerning the ongoing conflict between Iran and Israel. Deepak Shenoy, founder and CEO of Capital Mind, has cautioned investors about the potential for significant economic repercussions stemming from these escalating tensions. Global financial markets displayed a mixed performance, largely influenced by geopolitical events and key economic indicators. Israel's recent strike on Iran sent ripples through Asian stock markets. The event triggered an initial downturn, with Brent crude oil prices surging in response. Japan's Nikkei index fell by 147%, down. South Korea's Kospi decreased by 141%, down. Taiwan's market experienced a drop of 1.17%. Positive momentum later emerged, providing some relief. Cooling as inflation data initially sparked optimism, setting Asian stocks up for potential gain. Currency markets reacted accordingly, with the Taiwan dollar and South Korean won leading the advances. China's economic activity continues to be a focal point, especially after the announcement of a new trade deal with the U.S. This deal has further complicated market sentiment. Various stocks, including Torrent Power, Asian Paints, RIL, and Retaliates, are being closely watched as markets navigate these complex dynamics. Taiwan is actively promoting its technological capabilities and global partnerships, especially in biotech and AI. The nation showcased startups at a Paris technology event. Taiwan is heavily promoting biotech innovation, tech power, and global partnerships at the Bio International Convention in Boston in 2025. The recent Computex 2025 event highlighted AI deployment. Taiwan's stock market is performing well. The Taiwan Weighted Index closed up by 2.07% and is currently live. Taiwan Cyber Unit stated it will not be intimidated by China's bounty offer on cyber activities. Eurogrip has officially integrated into Honda Taiwan's after-sales service network. South Africa experienced a mixed economic performance recently. The rand initially held steady after the budget law passed, following months of delay. However, disappointing mining data subsequently caused a slight dip. Telkom's resumption of dividend payments boosted its share price by 7%. Flysafair introduced Lindy, its new AI-powered travel assistant. Around 375,000 South Africans can claim a portion of R4.5 billion in unclaimed dividends. Germany is experiencing renewed optimism as economists predict an upcoming economic upturn after a period of decline. In Germany's financial sector, Vantage Data Centers secured a €720 million asset-backed securitization. This deal is a first for euro-denominated transactions involving German data centers. BioNTech will acquire CureVac, boosting its cancer research efforts. The medical tech company Brainlab is preparing for an IPO in Frankfurt. Understood. Please provide the text you would like me to summarize. I am ready to begin. Brazil is seeing increased activity from Deutsche Börse subsidiary X, which is concentrating its efforts on the nation as it commemorates 25 years in the electricity exchange sector. Concurrently, analysts are evaluating whether Brazil's debt can be sustained after a fixed income tax incentive concludes. Moreover, Brazilian companies are actively pursuing and creating business ventures in Jordan. Ireland's robust business climate, especially its attractive tax policies for intellectual property, keeps drawing in companies from the United States. Meanwhile, in France, Debates are intensifying over proposed pension reforms that could raise the retirement age. Germany is grappling with rising energy costs as it seeks alternatives to Russian gas. Shifting focus to Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is facing increased pressure to address housing affordability challenges, particularly in major urban centres. The United Kingdom is currently navigating complex trade negotiations with the European Union post-Brexit, focusing on Northern Ireland Protocol issues. Australia recently announced new initiatives to boost renewable energy production and reduce carbon emissions. In Japan, the government is considering revisions to its defense strategy amid growing regional security concerns. Global markets are showing varied performance as London's FTSE 100 hit a record peak, spurred by higher oil prices and a softer dollar, partly due to Iraqi tensions and tariff concern. Canadian markets are participating in the upward trend, with the S&P/TSX Composite Index increasing by 0.35%, and attention is directed towards dividend stocks on the Toronto Stock Exchange, TCS. Malaysia's stock market is anticipated to gain further momentum. Bahrain's Islamic finance sector is forecasted to exceed $100 billion within the next 3 to 5 years. Italy is observing a recovery in its bond market. Across the Atlantic, the United States is set to impose a 21% anti-dumping duty on fresh tomatoes from Mexico, a move that is causing anxiety within the U.S. food sector due to the anticipated impact on consumer prices. Turning to Asia, Pakistan is expected to receive over $6 billion in financial aid from Saudi Arabia, establishing Saudi Arabia as Pakistan's primary foreign financier in FY26. Vietnam and Switzerland are engaging in discussions to explore cooperative ventures at the local level. Several cities are facing social challenges as tourist destinations like Barcelona and Lisbon are gearing up for protests on Sunday, June 15. Activists are mobilizing to voice their worries about the adverse effects of touristification. In South Africa, the city of Johannesburg is embroiled in a legal dispute with local traders, raising questions about governance and economic inclusion. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.